The Manufacturing Edge, where ops leaders break barriers, drive growth, and redefine what's possible. This three-part podcast explores what it really takes to run a safe, high-performing food and beverage operation every day on the plant floor. In part one, the team lays the groundwork by showing why safety in food and beverage is about far more than avoiding recordables or recalls. In this episode, we expose the hidden costs and leadership behaviors that shape what really happens on the plant floor.
Hello there, and welcome to the Manufacturing Edge, where we talk about the ideas, practices, and people helping manufacturing organizations run more efficiently and profitably. I'm your host, Will Merriman, Client Success Partner at TBM. Our topic today is safety, more specifically in the food and beverage industry is what we're going to focus on, what it looks like when it's done right, where it might break down, and why some of the strongest operations treat safety as part of the work and not really an afterthought. Today, I'm joined by a close colleague of mine, Nasir Emadi. Nasir is a senior management consultant at TBM with over 30 years of industry experience in operations, lean transformation, project management, and continuous improvement. He has direct experience working at food and beverage packaging organizations such as Mauser and UPPI, and while at TBM was involved in the lean transformation for one of the largest full-service flexible packaging converters in North America. And also, he is SQF certified. How are you doing today, Nasir?
I'm doing well, Will. Thanks. This is a topic I'm genuinely passionate about. Like you said, 30 years in manufacturing and many years in the food and beverage industry. And safety is one of those things that separates the organizations that sustain high performance from the ones that are constantly in recovery mode. So I'm glad we're putting a spotlight on food and beverage safety.
As am I. This is the first time I've had the chance to talk about it. So I'm excited to get into things with you. Before we really get into it, I do want to share an eye-opening statistic about some of the historic measurements we've seen across the industry. Back in 2024, the U.S. food and beverage industry had a near record 300 recalls costing $1.9 billion in direct expenses. And that's before lawsuits, before lost shelf space, and the around 30% of consumers who said a recall permanently damaged their trust in a brand. At the same time, producers also recorded 220,000 workplace injuries that same year. These failures almost always trace back to one of three domains, which we'll cover today, either a production floor issue, something having to do with people, or with suppliers. We're going to walk through each, where companies consistently break down, and what an optimized model looks like. Nasir, before we talk about fixing safety and any of the root causes, I want to be honest and get into what it actually costs when it breaks down. And the framing here, I think, which is a good analogy, is an iceberg. Most leaders and supervisors really only see the tip of the problem. Every OSHA recordable is a downtime event, it's a morale event, and a turnover risk. Workers' comp, regulatory fines, production stoppages, and reputational damage can all compound, and our data consistently shows safety prevention delivers 3 to 5 times the ROI compared to reactive spending. Nasir, you've been in operations for over 3 decades. In your experience, when you walk into a facility and observe, what does it immediately tell you about how seriously leadership is actually taking safety?
When you walk the floor and you see what people not complying with safety and complying with the processes that are put in place, that tells you that leadership hasn't bought in and driving compliance, right? And let me step back for a second on the numbers you mentioned about the recall. Yeah. 300 recalls in a single year. Well, most people don't realize that those aren't just random events. When I look at the root causes, almost every one of them traces back to a process gap that existed long before the recall happened. The contamination event, like you just mentioned, the iceberg, is just what becomes visible. And again, going back to those process gaps is generally because of leadership not driving the culture and implementing the culture that should be in place for preventing these.
So really, it starts from the top down in most cases, is what
Absolutely.
It sounds like.
Absolutely, yeah.
With those leaders, I mean, have you ever run into someone who's skeptical about the investment in safety? What do you do to help them see the full picture beyond maybe just a basic safety report or in-depth one that's on paper?
I think most leaders are driven by cost. They're driven by getting product out the door. And sometimes safety gets put on the back burner. But if you look at our way of measuring things, we talk about safety, quality, delivery, costs, and in that order. So safety comes first, right? But by putting safety first, the managers will see that it actually pays back in all the other areas from delivery cost perspective as well.
Where do you think that return or investment up front typically appears? And where do you maybe see those results materialize first?
It's first pass quality, right? So it shows up in making sure that we're not dropping product on the floor, we're not contaminating product, people getting injured, and contamination getting into the food or beverage. It shows up right away. I mean, right away on first pass yield, you'll see that you get better results.
That's great. I love that we define the problem, what causes it. I'd like to transition a bit into the first of those three areas we talked about, being product safety and what's on the production floor itself. Typically, it's biological contamination and allergens, which, based on data that we found to cause 76 of food and beverage recalls. Like you said, these are mostly process failures and not freak accidents, and with the proper attention can be mitigated up front. Additionally, we found many organizations lean on end-of-the-line inspections, which means by the time a problem is caught, it could already be in the product and be contaminated. There's a whole layer of HACCP plans that look great in a binder, but aren't embedded into daily standard work. And things like labeling and documentation can even play a part. Back in 2024, 45% of recalls being compliance failures. So with that being said, Nasir, you've worked on a lot of production floors. When you're doing an on-site assessment, what do you look for that immediately tells you whether safety standards are living in the operation or just sitting on the shelf?
Yeah, well, you hit on several really, really good points. So let me kind of go through one at a time here. From a HACCP perspective, plans that live in binders, one of the most common gaps that we encounter, sometimes they have beautiful HACCP plans in a facility, documented critical control points, monitoring frequencies, corrective action procedures. And then when you walk the floor and the operators can't tell you what the CCPs are, critical control points are, that's a reason for pause, right? So you may have the plans, but it's not communicated properly. So that's, again, not a food safety system. HACCP plans that are only documents but not put in place as a system would be an indicator that safety is not taken seriously. And then kind of what I mentioned earlier with first pass yield, but over relying on end of line inspections, that's a lagging control, right? By the time you catch something, it's too late. So safety always should be built into the process. Quality, just like quality, right? You can't inspect quality in at the end. You can't inspect safety in at the end. So catching something afterwards is not a good business practice. So again, from a packaging perspective, I've worked on lines that run, thousands of units per minute. I mean, just high-speed lines. And if you don't catch an issue early, it could lead to seal integrity issues, weight deviations, again, holding inventory that may not be good or has to be destroyed, right? And then you hit on allergens and biological contamination. Again, 76% of the recalls driven out there are biological and allergens, and that's just not bad luck. Those are predictable failure modes, and HACCP specifically exists to identify and control them. When I see a facility with allergen-driven recalls, my first question is, what does their changeover and sanitation verification procedure look like? And in almost every case, there's a gap there. Either the procedures isn't rigorous enough or it's not consistently followed. We always talk about the 5 S's leading to the 6th S, which is safety, right? And that's in the food and beverage industry, that's pretty critical. It's not only a tool that's used for organization, it's used for safety. So a clean, organized, visually managed environment where everything has a place and deviations are immediately visible, that's your first line of defense against contamination. So again, I always integrate safety with 5S, making it the 6S.
It really does seem, the indicators, based on what you're saying, is that there's a lot of moving parts. And there's a lot that needs to be built into the process to actually both instill and then maintain a proper safety culture, which is, maybe the main reason why many organizations gloss over it and don't give it the full attention that it truly needs. But at least when you're going and looking to help a team move from that reactive inspection process to in-process control, what do you think like a good first step would be to make that transition and really lock down the controls that are going to reduce any type of safety incidents?
When we go in, we take a baseline, we map the current process. That's our standard tool, and then see what, where the gaps are, right? And then we identify those gaps, and then we go back and address those gaps using impact difficulty and other tools that we have in our toolbox. But the first is looking at the current process, looking at documentation, talking to operators that are doing the work out there, and making sure that we identify the gaps between what should be and what is.
Tune in to part 2 of our next episode, From the Floor Up, Fixing Safety Where Product, People, and Suppliers Meet.